welcome back. We're waiting for Engineer OHAGA to come back. Right, welcome back, Engineer OHAGA. Your mic is on. Can you talk, Engineer?
Hi, Ndolo.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for testing that. Okay, good evening, participants of this meeting. Our today's guest is Engineer Erick OHAGA, and my co-host is Diana Waidanji. I am Anthony Ndolo. So we're going to start this meeting, and I will hand over to my co-host Diana to introduce our guest, and then we will see how the evening takes, which direction the evening takes. Diana, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Engineer Ndolo. Welcome everyone to the webinar today. We are hosting Engineer OHAGA, who is vying for the second vice president. Engineer OHAGA is our current ordinary council member at IEK and also the chairperson of the Young Engineers chapter. Of course, he'll introduce more of himself as he starts to talk so that I don't miss any key points in his career. So welcome, Engineer OHAGA. You have the discretion of taking the time you need. After all your talking points, you'll then prompt us when to ask questions. So karibu sana, and thank you for your time. Karibu pia members, and also keep your questions. We encourage members to keep their questions waiting so that you can ask the question by unmuting your microphone as opposed to writing it on the chat. But if you're in a noisy place, it's fine to write it on the chat. So karibuni sana. Karibu, Engineer OHAGA.
Thank you so much, Diana, and I'm privileged to be here today. I want to say my name is Engineer Erick OHAGA. I'm an electrical engineer by training. I was born about 40 years ago. I'm married to one wife and I have two kids, a daughter of 8 years old and a son of 2.5 years old. Now, I went to Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology and graduated in 2004. I also hold a Master's of Science in Nuclear Engineering, Master's of Science in Project Planning and Management, and a Master of Business Administration. I'm also a certified coach and a certified mentor and a professional development analyst. I have worked in various places, having graduated from 2004. I joined Vector International company. We were lucky that year, this company actually came to the university and sought the first 10 students. So we are employed by Vector International, a company that deals with power system backups and the rectifier systems. And in this particular company, I worked for 8 months, where I was involved in the design, installation, repair, and maintenance of the power backup systems and rectifiers. In March 2005, I joined Kenya Power as a graduate training engineer. We underwent 2 years compulsory training. And then in 2007, I was posted in Mombasa as a design engineer, where I worked for 1 year in design of low voltage, high power voltage power systems. After 1 year, I then joined the construction department, where I was in charge of the construction works of the power lines, the contract management of those power lines, and the tendering of those particular power lines. Then after 2 years, I then changed to operations and maintenance department, a department that I spent the better part of my life in terms of the profession, from 2008 up to 2014, where I was involved in the maintenance, system maintenance of the power systems and the operations of the power systems. And during that time, we underwent a lot of work to improve the supply reliability within the coastal region, and also introduced the first automation program that ascended the efficiency of the distribution network within the coastal region. Then in 2014, I was transferred to the business strategy in Steamer Plaza head office, where I was now involved in the power system planning, from generation planning, distribution planning, transmission planning, and also had an opportunity to develop the first distribution master plan that is being used by this country. I was also involved in the power purchase agreement. This is inter-country power trade, and also involved in the transactional advisory services for the country. I worked for 2 years until 2016, when I was promoted to the position of the county business manager within the regional operations of the company, and transferred to Kisumu, where I led the operations of the county of Kisumu as a regional manager, as a county business manager. I worked for 4 years until January 6, 2020, when I left Kenya Power and joined Nuclear Power and Energy Agency as the director in charge of the nuclear energy infrastructure development, a position that I hold until to date. Now, my work with IEK actually dates back to my times at the university. A second year in 2001, I joined the SES, the Society of Engineering Students, and then became an official of that particular society. And during that time, I registered as a student member of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And we had opportunity to engage the institution during the annual dinners. And that was the first contact that I had with the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. Then when I graduated, I became a graduate member of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And the year between 2016 and 2018, I joined the Institution of Engineers of Kenya as a committee member of the Young Engineers chapter that was being headed by Engineer Wachira Kahoro. Then in 2018 and 2020, I vied for the position of the ordinary council member and successfully elected as one of the ordinary council members. Now, as an ordinary council member, I was the vice chair of the membership committee. And during that particular term, we were able to expand the panels of the membership committee, because I can for sure say in certain panels, like the electrical and electronics panels, the rate of transition was very slow. And this was occasioned by the number of the panelists that were available at that particular time. And therefore, we sought to increase the number of panelists so that the transition of the applications that were available at that particular time would then be processed until admission into the role of corporate membership. Therefore, we did expression of interest, and membership applied, and they were selected for the positions of the panel members. And for the first time in the history of IEK, the members of these particular panels had an opportunity to elect their own chairpersons of these particular panels, with clear terms of reference and duration of service to these particular panels. During the 2018-2020, I also served in the Committee of Capacity Building and Mentorship Committee. And in this particular role, we were able to organize professional interview preparation for graduate engineers. And we say that we are going to go national, conducting PIPs nationally, conducting PIPs regionally, and conducting PIPs in the agencies where the engineers are based. And we are able to do a number of them nationally. We had one in Mombasa that was meant to be the regional one, and we held some in Kenya Power and Safaricom company. Now, within the mentorship and capacity building, I was the chair of the Young Engineers chapter. And under the Young Engineers chapter, we had a lot of activities. And this one ranges from students at the primary school level, high school level, and the graduate engineers who have graduated and they are under 35 years old. Now, under the secondary school, we were able to mentor in 2018, 600 high school students during the African Engineering Week that was held in Pride in Mombasa. This one saw consulting engineers, professional engineers, graduate engineers, student engineers having a chance to mentor the high school students that were drawn from the 6 counties of the coastal region, and these students were 600 in number. We also had opportunity within the 2 years to mentor various schools like Kenya High, Jamhuri High School, Kisumu Boys, Kisumu Girls, high schools, so that the STEM project can be aligned into becoming, into choosing engineering as a discipline when they eventually graduate from high school. Now, we've even taken this particular mentorship lower to primary school. And even between 6 years old and 15 years old, IEK had a collabo with Strathmore University, the iLab, and the DigiKids, where the kids of those ages between 4 years and 14 years are introduced to robotics and HTML design. And this is critical because we want to start aligning these students into choosing engineering and STEM projects, STEM subjects when they get into primary school and when they get into high school, and eventually choose engineering as a discipline of choice so that we can have sustainability in the professional engineering. As far as the university student mentorship is concerned, we have conducted a number of mentorship programs, ranging from Moi University, Nairobi University, Jomo Kenyatta University. We have had a number of those mentorship programs. And as a result of this mentorship, we have seen the role of this mentorship in these high school students. In the university, we have always sponsored the university students in our international conferences, where we have had sponsoring about 20 university students to present papers in IEK International Conference. And this has been very successful over the last 2 years. In as far as the mentorship for the graduate engineers is concerned, we have done it in the various regions. In my capacity as an electrical engineer, we did establish some regional blocks and assign specific mentors to specific engineers with clear terms and of reference on how this mentorship program can be executed to ensure a seamless transition from graduate engineers to professional engineers. And this has actually bore a lot of fruits in as much as we have seen a lot of interest from the graduate engineers actually transiting into professional engineers. Now, my candidature. I'm vying for the position of the second vice president of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And my candidature is pegged on 3 pillars. The first pillar is on the demystification of the engineering process. And we want to ensure that the process of registration from graduate engineer to professional engineer is seamless. We know that about 14,000 graduate engineers are in the role of EBK. About 3,000 are registered engineers. These 14,000, 8,000 are in infrastructural institutions that the engineers have been able to undertake specific projects that make them eligible for registration. All that is required is an impulse or a small signal so that this process of registration can be seamless and can be made easy to this particular cadre of graduate engineers. Now we have another 6,000 graduate engineers that either have less than 3 years of experience. Some of them have not been able to be involved in any projects, or some of them have not been able to be involved because they have not been employed in any infrastructural projects. And as a result of this, they are not able to transition from graduate engineer to professional engineer. Now, we plan to engage the public service to ensure that we have a compulsory internship program that will run in this infrastructural institution. 2 years with structured training, with clearly documented logbooks, so that by the end of the training, then the graduate engineers can then transition to a professional engineer, because they will have been mentored by the specific professional engineers assigned to them. The institutions that have engineers and have had projects, and these graduate engineers have executed these projects for even 20 years, some have for 15 years, some have 10 years, but are still not registered as graduate engineers, will be able to be mentored, because we'll develop registration manual within 243 days that gives a clear timeline on what requires to be done by what time, so that then they can move from graduate engineer to professional engineer. We will also establish a mentorship tree, because we recognize the fact that when you mentor someone and is able to do some other duties better than you are, then that becomes your joy. And that mentorship program should be made in such a way that you are standing there as a professional engineer, you are able to mentor like 5 engineers every year. These 5 engineers that have been mentored by you should also be committed during the first time of engagement with these engineers, that once they become professional engineers, they should be able to mentor at least 5 engineers, and then they can perish if they want to perish. Then these graduate engineers that are assigned to these professional engineers should be able to mentor some university students. And of course, the university students should be used to mentor high school students. And by so doing, we'll be able to ensure sustainability of the profession into 100 years that we want to see this institution live to see. That is something that we'll be able to implement once we get into office. The second agenda item that I want to give a lot of importance during the 2020-2022 year would be on the legislation. I can tell you for sure the engineers in this country have taken a wide berth on matters to do with the legislation. And if you're not in the table that is discussing issues to do with the legislation, then automatically you become the menu and you will be eaten. We want to change this narrative, and we want to ensure within the IEK standing committee, there will be a standalone committee that will be given the responsibility of ensuring that legislation in this country that affect engineers are reviewed. Those ones that are being proposed by even an engineering fraternity are checked, and what is in for the engineer in those particular routes. This particular committee should be able to give the report on a monthly basis when you have council meeting, so that we are able to monitor the legislative agenda from the drafting position, from the discussion, the enactment in parliament, and the enforcement of this particular legislation, with one clear mind that we are protecting the rights and the welfare of the engineer in these particular laws. This will ensure that the positions that are meant to be engineers must be reserved for the engineers, so that the welfare is continued. We will involve and start engaging with the members of parliament. Some of them are engineers registered, some of them are graduate engineers, are they in parliament? They'll be able to drive our agenda once we take these particular amendments into parliament, so that the affairs of the engineers are taken care of in terms of legislation. This is something that we need to take very seriously. I know we have been involved with the engineer Sharma, because we have realized when you are in the discussion table, when you are in that committee that is drafting certain legislation, you are able to articulate the points that are affecting the engineers, and you're able to draft them and ensure that they are in those particular acts. They're in these particular bills, and then you follow with the discussion of those particular bills until they are enacted and they become law. So that is one agenda item that we really want to see as an institution once we get into office. The last agenda item that we want to check is the empowerment of the branches. The IEK activities must reach mashinani. And we are saying that the branches must be given semi-autonomous authority so that they are able to operate as a branch. For a long time in the history of IEK, the branches have been underfunded to the tune of 100,000 per year. You realize that amount is not adequate to be able to run a branch. We propose to start and increase that amount from 100,000 to 300,000 so that then they can start engaging in activities that affect the engineers in the various counties. We know in the branches, and the way we have invested in the strategic plan, is that we are going to have about 6 branches. And these 6 branches, each of these branches is going to manage about 8 counties. Now within each branch, each counties will be able to have their standing committees, headed by a chairman and some committee leaders that will be able to look at the affairs of the engineers at the county level. So that anything that happens within the county level should be able to be taken over by those particular members who are IEK members in those particular counties. They'll be able to even give us visibility because we know engineers are spread all over the country, they are working in those particular counties, and we are able even to enforce certain regulations that are supposed to be enforced in the counties. So we will actually ensure that the branches are empowered so that we can ensure that each particular member of Institution of Engineers of Kenya, wherever part of the country he or she could be, feels the visibility of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. So that is basically what I want to do. And this, we are saying, should be able to happen within the 180 days of my assumption of office, with the support of the other people that will be elected in this upcoming election. Now, my parting shots.
Wait, parting shot is the last.
To humbly request.
Engineer, your parting shot will be the last.
It's question time now.
Engineer, your parting shot will come last, very, very last, as you close the meeting. So,
okay.
Diana has guided me and said that it's question time. So anybody with a burning question can start asking questions before we take a small break to convert this video. And then questions? Engineer Nyamai? Osumo, you are disturbing with some questions in the other forum. Can you ask questions now? All right, Engineer, as we wait for members to organize themselves, you have given us 3 points that you want to tackle in 100 days upon assumption of office. Now, which one is, can you quantify which can be achieved immediately?
Come on again, Engineer.
Can you quantify, like give us in like a measurable promise that can be achieved immediately? Because some of the legislative things might take long. We know the bureaucracy that is there is still in IEK. IEK is not fully able to. You have policies that have been there and they are still in the boardroom. They're not being put in practice. Which one out of this, when you enter the office, if elected, can you achieve immediately, instant impact?
Okay. I will look at 2 immediately within 180 years. One is the National Building Code. That one we should be able to achieve within 6 months of assumption of office. The other one is on the Energy Act. This one we want to get involved in the regulation drafting that will operationalize this particular act of 2019. And we know the affairs of the engineers must be enshrined in these particular regulations so that we can protect the welfare of engineers in these particular acts. So there is that Energy Act and the Building Code that we should be able to get them operationalized within the next 180 days. Another one would be on the procurement, Public Procurement Act, which is under review, and we are making our comments right now. We shall collect those particular comments and push them to Parliament for enactment.
Good. How about the active, like the branches that are there? We have branches that are already existing. We have Coast, we have Central, we have South Rift, I think we have Western. These branches should see an impact instantly because they already exist and they have members. Will the money be done not in 100 days, but immediately you guys the new team takes office? Because people cannot wait within 100 days for the money to start transferring. It has to be an impact so that people start feeling. South Rift, I'm sure, because an active branch, it should get the money immediately to start working on other duties.
Thank you, Engineer. I can assure you within 100 days means from zero. So this one I can assure you, after being sworn in as the second vice president and having attended the first council meeting, I should be able to make that proposal to the council. We should be able to ratify within the first month of our meeting as a council.
Okay. Somebody is saying something here. Who is talking?
May I come in?
Yeah, engineer, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric, for your quite ably presented like roadmap to implement your aspirations as second vice president. My attention is keenly going to your bullet number 2, monitor infrastructure legislation. This seems to be the link that we've been having in the past, which has apparently disconnected us from what we aspire to achieve and what we actually achieved. Perhaps you can dwell slightly longer on this, just to bring out the main action lines when we say incorporate legislative committee, IEK standing committees. Perhaps you need to bring it out that this currently does not exist, and therefore we need to restructure the way we do business, create symbiotic networks with MPs, and engage in IEK activities. One of the things I think we realized, and you remember when we had the 26th International Conference in Ukunda, there's 2 MPs, Honorable Kiragu and the Honorable Karue, who came and actually requested that we need to put them on our conversations so that they can act as the link between what needs to be legislated to place the engineer in the appropriate position in terms of operationalizing the policies that the government has put in place to work to the advantage of the engineer. And therefore, my request is perhaps you can get slightly more meat into these 2 lines so that I think as we go forward, we can carry the same agenda. Hopefully, you'll go into the council and you need to maybe get it very clear in your mind how, one, you're going to push for the restructuring of the committees or how we do business, because mainly the main business of the institution is transacted through committees. Maybe you can say something more about it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Engineer. What we want to propose once we get into the council the first month is normally the formation of committees. And this one normally is guided by the presidential agenda. And in this case, we are saying we are going to establish a standalone legislative committee that would be able to look and review the infrastructural laws that affect the engineers. And therefore, this committee will be a standalone committee with a chair and its members, so that then they can be looking at the issues that are legislative in nature and how they can be addressed. And this would involve actually the review of the existing laws. So there will be a standalone committee that is responsible for legislative agenda. Then in terms of MPs and how we want to involve the MPs, and for sure, as you say, for many years we have not taken, this has been a missing link. And we want to involve MPs in every activities that IEK undertakes, even including the presidential dinners, so that they can feel part and parcel of our institution. So that by the time we are asking them to articulate our points in the National Assembly, they are alive to the fact that these are the issues that are affecting the engineers, and even as they discuss these particular bills in Parliament, they'll be discussing from a point of knowledge, so that then we can secure those particular assertions that we will have put in those particular drafts. So we want to have very frequent engagement with the MPs. We want to ring-fence certain numbers of MPs that have some inclination towards engineers, so that we are sure of their support when it comes to passage of these particular bills in Parliament.
Okay, Engineer, I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer. I think we have we can answer. You can answer one more question before we go for a small break. Now, somebody has sent me a message, and he is asking. Just a minute, Engineer, my mic. Somebody has sent me a question asking, there is something that Engineer Margaret Ogai posted today, and then there is it true that the following that's taking place? Yesterday you had a meeting with EBK, and somebody is asking the following. Is it true that the transfer from IEK to EBK, the route will not be automatic anymore upon passing professional interview? Is the panelists going to be consisting only of consulting engineers, and why? And the 3-year post-GE registration, how are you going to negotiate about it?
Okay.
You can also
I must confirm that we had a very good meeting yesterday with the EBK, and the Institution of Engineers of Kenya admits its members to the various membership roles. Now, to become a corporate member of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya, and our constitution that we have currently, requires that one undergoes an interview. What has happened in the past is that this structure of the interview that is conducted by IEK with the sole reason of admitting a graduate member into a corporate member has been structured in line with the EBK structure, such that once you have undergone the mentorship, because the members of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya is where the professional engineers are. We reside under IEK. And there are a lot of mentorship that goes along even before a graduate engineer becomes a corporate member. And therefore, it's been a clear route of easing the process of registration. But I want to say that IEK has no mandate to register or to license a graduate engineer. All we have been doing has been interviewing for purposes of admission to the corporate member. And once somebody becomes a corporate member, then he submits that particular corporate certificate to EBK and the registration documents to EBK. What has happened in the past, and what we are assured that will continue to happen, is that these particular documents that have been reviewed by IEK, and since most of the panelists also sit in EBK, and the EBK has the role of and the mandate of registering and licensing graduate engineers, they will call the graduate engineers who have gone through IEK just for a discussion. And then they're able to look at the documents, because they must have those particular documents, because they're the body that is mandated to regulate, license, and register the graduate engineer. And therefore, nothing has changed as far as the IEK route is concerned, because we need to have members transiting from graduate members to corporate members. And to become a corporate member, you must undergo an interview. And that is what we have been doing. And it so happens that that interview structure for IEK almost resembles that one of EBK. And therefore it becomes easier for somebody whom we have actually interviewed and passed that particular exam. The percentages of the probability of success for these particular candidates is always 100% when you go for discussion at EBK. So nothing has changed in terms of route. But what we are saying is that because we have had situation whereby the panels in IEK are different from the panels in EBK, this is going to be harmonized so that then we have one panel that is conducting interviews, that is hosted in EBK. And once you become a professional engineer, once you have passed that particular interview, because you will have been mentored by these particular engineers who are members of IEK, then automatically you become a corporate member. So for sure, the route has not changed. It's even becoming easier so that now we don't have this double submission of documents from IEK to EBK, but also to ensure that EBK still operates within their legal mandates. In terms of consultants being the people responsible for the interviewing panels, that's a requirement by EBK, that for you to become a member of the panel, you must be a consultant. That's provided for. And therefore, the people who will apply to become panel members of these harmonized panels will then have to comply with that provision. On the 3-year post-graduation period, it is provided for in the regulation that once you graduate, you first make contact with the Engineers Board of Kenya. And then the time starts ticking. You will recognize the fact that there are some people who work for even 15 years and they have not made contacts actually with the EBK. And then you make contact on the 16th year. And then you are told that you have to wait for 3 years, then you become a registered engineer. But there are some special cases, like now we have the SCOC ruling, which happened in 2017. And then somebody became EBK graduate engineer in 2018. And this guy has worked for like 10 years. You see, these are special cases that could be dealt with on a need-by-need basis by EBK. But the requirement by the regulation that you must have been a graduate member of EBK for 3 years is a provision in the Act that they would really want to adhere to when it comes to the normal person who has graduated, he has worked, and he has performed projects for more than 3 years, then he should be able to have registered so that then he can become a professional engineer. But for the special cases, it will be dealt with on a need-by-need basis.
All right, thank you, engineer, for that questions, for the answers rather. So let's take a 5-minute break. Less than 5 minutes. Let me cut this call and then we start another one, so that I save the video properly. We join back in maximum 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you so much, Dolo.
Thank you. Members, don't run away. Come back. You can take some water, engineer.